Alright, good morning everybody. So we spoke in the last two videos in this series. First video we spoke about Modani and the brachas of Al Natilas Yadayim, Asher Yotzar, and Elokai Neshama. And then the last video we spoke about Birkas HaTorah. Now if someone has to drink coffee or whatever, they should do that after Birkas HaTorah. It's interesting, 2 days ago, I only realized it now because sometimes when I do the chok, I just look at it, I don't actually learn it all the time, or I learn parts of it and I go back and do other things, maybe I do it the next day. So 2 days ago, what I saw yesterday, the chok had Birkas HaTorah from the Rambam, and the Rambam has the Nusach Al Divrei Torah. And just to finish off from yesterday, I was in a bit of a rush. Now I'm starting the video right away. That we have Eilu Dvarim Shein Lam Shir HaPe'ah V'Bekar Marayim V'Los Chosonim V'Salmud Torah. These are the things that have no set minimum and no set maximum. Pe'ah is the corner of the field. The Rayon is the Chagiga offering, the Shlomim, the peace offering that's brought for pilgrimage festivals, for Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. We're now in the Yemei Shlomim, Tashlumin, the Yemei Miluim for Shavuos. We're in the week after Shavuos, since there's no Chol HaMoed. If one didn't bring the korban, the sacrifice on the day of Shavuos and the day of Pentecost, he could bring it any time the following week. So we're still in that week, which is why we don't say Tachanun according to most customs. We'll get to that later, what Tachanun is. Probably be quite a bit down, maybe next week or in the next 2 weeks. Maybe we'll get that far in our discussions. That's the mission of Pe'ah. Chagiga is a Masechta that talks about that, which is one of my favorite Masechtas. Personally, you shouldn't say that. It's Rashi says that's an Indian of Roya Zionist. It's not something we should say. This one I like. I think as long as they say this one I don't like, which might be difficult. Certain things might be difficult, but you shouldn't say, I don't like any part of Torah. We're just supposed to learn and be happy that we're learning and involved in this devotion of learning Torah. Gemilas Chasodim, acts of kindness. Could be a little act of kindness, could be a big act of kindness. There's never any end to it. There's never any point where you say you haven't done the mitzvah yet, and there's no point where you say you've fully finished the mitzvah yet. And there's discussions that we learned recently the Yerushalmi that discuss. Learning Yerushalmi Pe'ah very slowly right now. Quickly, but intermittently, a tiny little bit every night, and I don't really delve into it just to be exposed to the material. It's kind of what Nachman Breslover taught, that we should try to expose ourselves to as much Torah as possible. Then once we have the exposure and the Bikiyas, we could have true Ian, we could have true depth. There's really no true Ian, there's really no true depth in Torah that comes out of ignorance, and there's no real understanding without Bikiyas, without a wide understanding of Torah. Many yeshivas, they focus on the little piece, more or less, so you learn how to learn type of things. But on your own, it's good to just plow through everything. It's nothing wrong to do 2 or 3 Blad Gemara in a day, particularly if you feel that you get something out of it. even if you don't get, obviously you're not going to get everything, there is learning that quickly. And I've heard, people always told me you're not going to remember anything. It's not really true. You go through it, go. If that's how you feel like learning, if you feel like that's a good path for you, finish Mishnayos, finish Shulchan Aruch, which I haven't. I've gotten stuck on Shulchan Aruch and Rambam when I was going through it. That's something I have to fix. Go through Tanakh. Go through. Why not? Meaning you're supposed to. You're supposed to go through Kol HaTorah Kula. You're supposed to finish Shas, Ba'al Yerushalmi, Sifri, Sifra. It's not that hard. You can do it. But we'll put that aside for now. Not that I've been through all those. I've never even learned Sifri, Sifra, and I don't know anybody really who has. Maybe I know people who have, but they don't talk about it. But it's not like. It's not that difficult though. Just to go through things. And now that everything's in English, or even if you don't necessarily need English, but sometimes just to have the Signon, just to have the Gemara, especially our school has Nakudas, it makes it very easy. But even, there's a website, Sefaria, I don't know how they pronounce it. Because now I'm learning Chulin, and they don't have yet the English for Chulin on Sefaria or whatever. And so I'll open online, when I have a few minutes and I don't have access to my art school Gemara that I have here in my car, and I have a few minutes free, I'll open up the Gemara on Sefaria, which is only the original text, but it's divided up in a way that you get, even though it also doesn't really even have punctuation, but it's divided up in a way that it's easy to follow. And then, especially with Chulin, it's useful to have English. So then, there's a website, halacha.com, halacha with a K, Halakah, that has the whole Sensino Shas. Some of them, in regular form, but all of them are available in PDF. Just in English, the text of Sensino, and so you can go back and forth between Sefaria or some other site, but Sefaria is pretty good. There's also an app I have on my phone, which I think is also online, 100% free, the whole text of the Chavrusa Gemaras, which also, for me, it's been a big help in going quickly through Shas. Of course, I could sit and learn and make a laning on a normal Gemara with Surah Sadaf, but when you have something like this, Biala Rebbe, when he saw this app, he was very excited. He said, "Wow, now this is what I need. This is what we all need. To have access to this for free on a." I helped him to get a what do you call it? Tablet, a cheap tablet, $50 at Walmart. You get a tablet and it has all of these apps. It's really quite incredible how much Torah learning you can do. All right, the Gemara there that we liturgically say every day. Acts of kindness and Talmud Torah. Learning Torah. There's not too little and not too much. Meaning even if you just do a tiny bit every morning, every night, you basically did what you have to do, but you never really totally fulfilled the obligation. And then a very similar Gemara goes through the things that a person can enjoy in this world, the reward for this world, and not lose any reward in the next world. I've discussed, the hashkafa behind this idea, if schar mitzvah b'hayal maleka, that there's no reward in this world for a mitzvah. The Kedushas Levi talks about this, the Noam Lamelech talks about this. So Chusam Yagin Leina V'Kol Yisrael Amen. It's a pretty basic hashkafa that a lot of people lose out on. If we say that there's no reward for mitzvahs in this world, why does the Torah only discuss rewards in this world. The Torah doesn't even talk about heaven and hell. All we know about heaven and hell, quote unquote, for lack of better terminology, which is slightly different than the Christian mythology of heaven and hell. It's still a mythology of heaven and hell in Judaism. We don't really, the terms that we use don't really grasp what these things really are because we haven't been there. These are all metaphors for something that we can't really understand until we get there, and we're hoping we get to heaven and hoping that we don't spend any time in hell. But one major difference in the Jewish view is that whatever you want to call it, hell, purgatory, whatever, Gehinnom, is it's temporary. We don't believe that's permanent, but the Ramban says even 1 second is in Gehinnom is worse than living the whole life of the sufferings of Job. So it's a place we don't want to be, But it shouldn't be just about heaven and hell, meaning that's not what life is about. When people get obsessed with these things. You see, I'm getting off of topic because I wanted to talk about the daily devotions of the Orthodox Jew, and then with additions of the Hasidic Jew. Today what I plan to discuss is more Hasidic. But all of this being said, what are these devotions about? We have to see so many people don't see the forest through the trees. We're not here just to be religious. I was talking to one of my colleagues at work. I actually supervise him, but he's much my senior, and I'm very humbled to be around him. And he's an Orthodox Christian priest. And he told me, he said, they were going through some liturgy that goes through all the things they have to ask forgiveness for. And then he said, and God also forgive us for being too religious. And this particular priest who works mostly in the mental health portion of our prison, he always says that the people who are, that obsession with religion is generally a sign of mental illness. And when someone gets over that, then they are more spiritually healthy. And quite often the obsession with religion, I think, at certain points in a person's life and growth are healthy. There is this point in a person's life we talk about in the Orthodox world, particularly like people who grew up modern Orthodox and then they flip out. There was even a song about it, I'm flipping out. That, all of a sudden they get very, very religious. And then they find a healthy, grounded place. And I think this is a healthy part of growth in life. To go through that at some point in your life and then find the proper balance. We shouldn't look so negatively at this stage of flipping out, but also not stay there forever. You know, I remember, and they told us this even in high school. They told us that, particularly most kids, boys and girls, usually they're late teens, early 20s. Usually the late teens is, 17, 18, 19. That's the time for flipping out, That's the term that they use. And, you go through that, and then that's not the best time really to get married. But then sometimes they go like really low, sometimes after that. And that's also not, but when you kind of balance out, that's probably the best time to get married. But in general, people, they usually are getting married closer to the quote-unquote flipping out time. I mean, it shouldn't wait too long, and everybody has to find their proper place in life and everything, and they have to find themselves. And I think within the context of Torah, one can find oneself without being an extremist. You have to find yourself in Torah. That's part of it. You shouldn't just be an extremist. You shouldn't just be like everybody else. You got to be your own individual. And yes, I believe for me it's what works. Orthodox Judaism works for me. Doesn't work for everybody. My bigger problem is not really with the people who are not religious as much as with the people who are anti-religious. It's just as much of an issue of bigotry on either side. And we have to get over these issues of bigotry and self-righteousness, which still, all of these things, you can't imagine that a person's going to go through life without experiencing these things at some point in their life, without feeling some form of bigotry, without feeling some form of self-righteousness, without feeling all of these various things that are negative and that we have to get over. But we're just not there yet. And it's part of life, it's part of growth, it's part of, making mistakes, part of youth. Part of the indiscretions of youth, to learn how to overcome these aspects of life, to learn from our mistakes. But at some point we also have to recognize how mistaken we are in these things, and so forth. And these things are part of life that we have to overcome. A lot of people, like, when it comes to bigotry, they say, well, people are taught bigotry. They don't have it naturally. I'm not so sure about that. The question of nature and nurture and bigotry. These are serious questions that we have to address. And try to figure out, how to overcome them. It's part of growing up. It's part of becoming an adult. Knowing how to address these issues and how to overcome them. And it's not always so easy. But that's what life is about. Life is not about being easy. Life is about overcoming the struggles of life. And then when we come to that point, then we grow and we move on to something greater. And we can recognize the brotherhood of humanity, because children tend to be superficial and deep at the same time. And adults usually will be one or the other, and we have to find the balance between the two. We have to learn how to get over superficiality. And it's a problem in just about every religious circle of every religion. The superficiality of living a religious life. And that's part of the challenge. It's not to say that religion is bad. I mean, we spoke about this in other videos, how religion is, for the most part, a force of good in the world. But we have to overcome the superficiality of religion to get into authentic spirituality and use the tools that religion give us to attain a deeper level of spirituality. That's part of our challenge in life. And I think having discussed all of that, we can now get to what I wanted to talk about. So again, if someone needs to, in order to clean their body and so forth, they need to eat or drink something, they should be doing it after they've already said the Birkas Torah. Probably they should say Kriya Shema. There's a whole discussion. Is it proper to say Kriya Shema without tefillin on, without the brachas? And for the most part, the Hasidim say yes. Especially if you have the daven later, you should say Kriya Shema. I mean, although I haven't done it in a while, and I should be doing it right now, because I admit the Kriya Shema that I said this morning wasn't the proper Kriya Shema that I should have said. And there's even one who davened at 6 o'clock in the morning should probably say Kriya Shema over again at some point, especially if you daven with a minyan that rushed through everything. Or I didn't even daven with a minyan, but I'm busy with my kids and my wife and trying to help other people, and while I was involved with other things, getting ready to daven in the morning, I was talking to someone on Facebook Messenger, trying to give them chizuk, trying to, and things like this, and and how involved life is, and I'm trying to get out the door because I'm supposed to be at work on time today, and work is also a religious devotion and a spiritual pursuit. We have to recognize that. And I think religion helps us to recognize that. By being involved, by having a religious anchor in your life. And again, and I've said this before, even though I am a believer, I do think that the skeptic can develop a lifestyle that follows a religious regimen to make their life better. Meaning to start the day and to have a devotional life that is focused on whatever spiritual goals that you have, even as the skeptic, even as the materialist, as the humanist, as the secularist. You can find a path for now. Let's get to what we actually want to talk about. The devotions that the Hasidic Jews use. And I think this this whole discussion is really a good segue into that, because it brings us to an understanding of what this is all about. And so part of the, generally, and I personally have a hard time right now in my life for various reasons to engage in this particular devotion the way I should. I still try to maintain it as much as I can. But again, once you've said the brachas of there's a whole question among Hasidim how to approach this. Should one say everything only after you've gone to the mikveh and so forth? But in general, my approach is like this. So I'll share my approach is, to say Birkas HaShachar, at least the basics of the, Al Natil Sidayim, Asher Yotzar, L'kai Neshama, and Birkas HaTorah, and Kriya Shema, if need be. And then and then to clean the body inside and out, to use the bathroom, make sure you're clean, take a shower, and then to go to the mikveh. And if you need, in order to go to the bathroom, if you need to drink the coffee or whatever, I personally don't, but if that's your derech, I'm not opposed to that. And then like I said, obviously after you go to the bathroom, you take a shower, and you go to the mikveh. And so we'll talk about the mechanics, what the mikveh is, and this is something that is not practiced by all Orthodox Jews, as far as a man going to the mikveh at all. But by the Hasidim, it's understood to be a rather important devotion to try to go to the mikveh every day, ideally before the morning prayers. Me personally, I find it easier to go some point later in the day if possible. Depends on the community. Some communities mikveh is open all day, and some communities mikveh is only open in the morning before morning prayers, and some will close the mikveh quite early, 8 o'clock, something like that. They'll say if you're not, you don't really need to go to the mikveh if you have to go to the mikveh that late, or something like that. You want to do this extra devotion. I remember that for years it was like that in Kew Gardens Hills, and then another mikveh opened that's open all day, and that mikveh lost all its business, pretty much. Not all of it, but a lot, because so, excuse me, as far as the men's mikveh. So what is a mikveh? I know some of my viewers might be Christians, so they're familiar with the story of John the Baptist baptizing Jesus in the Jordan River. And they imagine that he was doing something that was one time in his life, transforming him, converting him. No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because, mean, Jesus was Jewish, and John the Baptist was Jewish. So it wasn't a conversion event. It wasn't a one-time-in-life event. It was part of the normal religious devotional life, not necessarily daily, but in those days, most likely was daily. Devotional life of many, if not most, if not all Jews, was the mikvah. So what is a mikvah? The word mikvah, now, technically a river is not a mikvah, but it fulfills the same thing as a mikvah. Mikvah means a gathering of water. Although it's related to the word for hope, and there's all kinds of homiletical approaches to that. But essentially in the current Orthodox Jewish world, there are four major uses for the mikveh, as well as still there are certain minor uses, although probably all of those minor uses could be placed into the category really that we're discussing right now. So there are three legal requirements according to Orthodox and conservative Judaism to use the mikveh, and then there is the customary usage of the mikveh. So first of all, what is a mikveh? How do we make a mikveh? There are natural mikvehs, or most lakes, the oceans, and many rivers and streams. In general, if it's big enough, deep enough for a human being to be immersed all at one time, and it's natural body of water that's always there, and we're going to have to discuss very briefly what the difference is between still water and running water. But in general, I'll say like this: if it comes from rainwater, it has to be still. If it comes from another source, ocean, a spring, something like that, then it can be moving water. That's basically it. So a river or a stream that's mostly rainwater is not a kosher mikveh. But the non-kosher mikveh, quote unquote, can still be used for the customary mikveh, just not for the legal mikveh. And for the legal mikveh, there would be additional usages in ancient times that don't really apply today, for the most part, although certain aspects perhaps, yes. So if a mikveh is constructed of rainwater, general indoor mikvehs that are kosher mikvehs are made with rainwater. So then we have to be very careful that there's no leak in the structure, no cracks. It has to be totally still. And the way they are generally constructed is that you will have two pools. One is rainwater, and the other pool is tap water. And they are connected with a pipe. There are various ways that that's done. Sometimes we fulfill all the different ways, or several of the different ways. The standard way is that the two pools are next to each other, side by side, and there's a pipe that connects the two. Another way is that you overflow from one into the next, which you could actually do by filling from the rainwater into the next one, and it comes out through the pipe, or sometimes there's more than one rainwater pool. And in another way, it's sometimes done particularly Chabad, is that the rainwater pool is underneath, and that the floor has a hole in it, and it's added to that on top of it. And I've seen certain places, particularly some of the more strict Satmar ladies' mikvahs, will have all of them. It might even, and some places might even have actually 4 different boros, meaning that the first bore will be, meaning the rainwater bore will have rainwater on bottom and on top, and connected with a pipe to the next bore, which usually just only has 1, but sometimes they even want to be more strict on the bottom and on top. Usually 3 is what you usually see in some of the more strict Satmar places, and in the really strict Satmar places, all of the water will be rainwater, meaning you'll have a bor megashamim, and then you'll have a and then you'll have the next one is actually in the one that's usually tap water is actually filled with rainwater. That they'll have some large cistern of rainwater for when they change the water. That's generally only done in women's mikvahs. That's a very strict approach, and it's done in Satmar and Vishnitz, and some of the very strict, and maybe in New Square as well. But that's a very big chumrah. That's not really halachically necessary. I mean, there was discussion, particularly in pre-war America, pre-World War II America, and it was a practice in pre-World War II America to just only fill mikvahs with tap water, because there's a prohibition, rabbinical prohibition, against using water that was drawn up in a bucket and thrown into the mikvah directly. If it was allowed to go across the floor into the mikvah, then it's fine, and that's how we're strict to do that anyway, even with the rainwater, even with everything, that it shouldn't go directly into the mikvah. It should go across the, usually there's like a gutter that makes sure that it's going straight across to a certain point before it goes into the mikvah, for whatever it is, certain, I don't know, is it Dalet Amos, is it 4 cubits, or is it Dalet Tvachim? I don't remember, 4 hand breadths. I don't remember how much that is. I don't think it's Dalet Amos. It's not, what I've seen, it's usually not that far. So it's probably Dalet Tvachim, it's probably 4 hand breadths. Which is going to be about a cubit anyway. Although it's probably, it seems like it's more than 4 hand breadths also, whatever. We'll put that aside for now. But in addition to that, the way our city water works, it's usually not actually brought up into any actual vessel. It's just going straight through pipes from the reservoir, and usually the reservoir is a kosher mikvah, and so it's just totally connected directly from the reservoir. And really, technically, halachically speaking, a mikvah could be just filled with, most of the time, with tap water. It depends on the method that the city uses. I heard of Herschel Schechter says that when we have water gauges that measure how much water is used, which most houses have, especially if they have to pay for water. Where I live, it's not really like that. so it depends on the municipality. That could have a tourist kli on it, and then it's considered mayim shuvim. That could be considered a vessel, and therefore it's drawn water, and that would not be kosher for a mikveh. Wasn't maybe so much the case in pre-war America, and maybe that's why it was the general custom, really, pretty much before Samarov came to America, was for women's mikvahs to have no rainwater, just to have directly tap water, which is also, I understand it's rainwater. That aside for now. But that being said, when it comes to men's mikvahs, that's really why a swimming pool, whatever, generally should be totally fine for a man's mikvah, particularly if you can turn the filter off while using it for a mikvah. Might be a question whether or not that's even so important. Generally we say it is. Because really, essentially the whole time it's, from the basic law, just about any pool, particularly if it's an in-ground pool, is a kosher mikveh, and then there's a discussion of even a non-kosher mikveh is kosher for a man. Depends on various things as well. So even, one thing about a mikveh, it has to be attached to the ground. Whether it's built up from the ground or built into the ground, dug into the ground, it has to be attached to the ground. It can't be just a tub that's above ground and not attached to the ground. However, particularly for Tfilas Ezra, the way it kind of was made, it would seem even a totally unattached pool would be kosher for Tfilas Ezra. So I don't have that much time right now. Haven't really gotten into what I have into anything right now, so we'll have to leave a lot of these things for later, but let's just briefly talk with the few minutes that we have left. Mikvah has to contain 40 sa'ah of water. Different discussions of what that is, but basically it comes to big enough for an adult human being to totally immerse under the water all at once. And it could be bigger, but it can't be smaller. If you're having, rainwater connects to regular water, each pool has to be that size. It's better if it's bigger, it just makes it easier. There are different opinions of how big that is. I haven't heard anything less than 175 gallons, and I haven't heard anything more than 275 gallons. Safe to say, if it's 300 gallons, which in general, I'm a pretty tall guy, I have a hard time fitting into anything less than 300 gallons. 300 gallons is a pretty good, which is not that big, not that small, not that big. When it comes to a swimming pool, it's pretty small. And if you're having two, one rainwater and one regular water, you have two. Each one is 300 gallons. You're going to be fine if you want to build your own mikvah. Generally, the one that people are actually going to go into is going to be bigger. Usually, be at least 1,000 gallons. gallons. Yeah, and usually more, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 gallons. And I've seen some that are Olympic swimming pool size, particularly men's mikvahs that could be, 30 guys could be in there at the same time, I should have just gone through that yellow light, but I didn't. The mikvah has to be, in general, when we use the mikvah, we don't wear any clothes. Our body has to be clean. You have to take a shower first before immersing. What else do I have to say about the mikvah? Yeah, you have to go under the water all at once. Now, can you wear clothes in the mikvah? Yeah, technically, especially. So, what is the mikvah used for? Let's talk about that. The three halachic, legal requirements of the mikvah that apply today. Probably the most important one is a woman after she has a period, a married woman. She's not allowed, once she has even the slightest amount of blood, husband and wife are not allowed to touch each other. And so therefore, and then once, the way we do it today is, even though in ancient times you would just count 7 days from when it starts, the way we do today is we count 7 days from when it ends, from when there's not even the slightest amount of blood. And then has to go to the mikvah, and we're very strict about what kind of mikvah, and how the whole body has to be clean before going to mikvah, nails and everything, no tangled hair. Those who have a custom to shave their hair do that before mikvah, and so forth. Every month, or if they're pregnant or nursing, it'll be less. The next halachic requirement for the mikvah is when someone who is not born Jewish converts to Judaism. The part of the conversion is the mikvah. And that the convert should immerse in the mikvah in front of the Beit Din, 3 rabbis, in front of the Beis Din, in front of the rabbinical court. It doesn't necessarily have to be 3 rabbis, it could be any 3 Orthodox Jewish men who are not related to each other. Obviously, they're not going to be related to the convert. Observant Orthodox Jewish men, or in some cases, observant conservative might also be technically kosher, though generally we don't. Depends on the situation. What's next is dishes. When you buy a dish from someone who's not Jewish, or they make a dish, whatever, not about kashrus and not about cleanliness, but the dishes go in the mikvah. In ancient times, before going to the temple and before eating truma and things like that, there would also be immersion in the mikvah. We don't have that really today. Although probably if someone would visit the Temple Mount, which you shouldn't do, but if they did, and those who do generally practice like this, go to the mikveh. And then now I'm at work, I don't have time to talk about the custom of men going to the mikveh, and which really could be custom for women as well, which sometimes it is. We don't have time to talk about that right now. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment.